Coming to you from our opulent and luxurious 4x8 refurbished broom closet at the national headquarters in Indianapolis. With duct tape studio lights and a mic that you barely can hear, we hope to entertain and educate you. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Oh boy. We have escaped the broom closet. We are now in the West Hollywood bunker. My normal co-hosts are not here. Mark Seavey, we will definitely miss the beard, and Ashley Gorbuja Maldonado. And please, if you're out there, don't tell her that I know how to say her name. That's one of the things I like to make fun of her about. So today we're going to do things a little bit differently. As you can see, it's not just me. And if you're listening, but before we get into that, if you're listening, I just want to say thank you for being with us on this journey. And if you're watching us on YouTube, seeing these faces, you're welcome. Today we do have a special guest. His name is Scott DeLuzio. Did I say that correctly?
You got it.
He is his own podcast host and an Army veteran. His podcast is driveonpodcast.com. And because I don't know Scott very well, but I know he's an expert on Scott, I'm going to let him introduce himself and his show.
I try to be anyways. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. And my podcast, Drive On Podcast, is a podcast that I started about a year ago. Actually, looking at the date, it's a year ago to the day that I started the podcast. And it really came from me just getting fed up with hearing about the 22 a day, the veteran suicides, all the homeless veterans, all the other issues that go on with the veteran community. And me just thinking to myself that there has to be something else out there. There has to be, people are doing things, but it just doesn't seem like it's enough. And the things that people are doing, maybe the veterans that are struggling just don't know about these resources. So my podcast exists really to get the word out about these resources, connect current and prior service military members and civilians together to discuss the issues that they're going through, the life experiences that they've had, the struggles through the military, all the emotional stuff that comes with it, to give hope and strength to the military community, whether it's the families, the veterans, the actively serving military members. Try to help them all out in whatever way I can. And I figured a podcast was a great way to reach a whole bunch of people, so that's where that came from. So,
well, we agree with starting a podcast being a great idea. Just so we're on the same
yeah,
page
it seems
there.
that way. Yeah.
So how I listened to your anniversary episode, and it is right about a year, right? And how often are you doing these?
Yeah, so I've been putting out an episode once a week for the last year. The first week, I think I put out 3 episodes just because that was what I was told is the right thing to do when you start a podcast. So I did that, but I've been putting them out once a week ever since then. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing as far as podcasting. I still don't really have an idea, but I actually kept it all pretty much to myself. My wife knew that I was doing the podcast, but I didn't really tell anyone about it at the time because I thought I was going to probably screw something up and I was going to look like a jerk, and I didn't want that to happen. So I wanted to get, at least half a dozen or so episodes under my belt before I started telling other people about it and getting it out there. So it was a good month and a half maybe before I actually started telling friends and family and other people like that I was doing a podcast. But once when I did, I started reaching out to some of my old friends, from the Army, and asking them to share their stories, other people that I knew just through business and stuff that I've met, and they've had interesting stories. I've reached out to them and started recording these interviews, kind of like what we're doing right now. Where you have a guest and you're chatting back and forth with them and talking about their struggles and what they did, more importantly, to overcome those struggles, how they got out of there. And so that's kind of where I've gone with it. So
now I'm doing math in my head, and I'm a Marine, so I might make some funny faces doing math, but
You need a crayon to do the math, right?
a crayon and a whiteboard instead of my bunker. You said only your wife knew, but you do interviews. So interestingly, how did you do your first interview?
So the first few episodes were just me solo rambling about whatever topics I happen to have on top of mind. But my wife was actually the first person I interviewed. I figured that was a nice and easy, low stress way to do it, because she's put up with my crap for enough years that she could put up with it for a half hour of us chatting with each other. And so her and I, we just sat down and we talked about her experience as a military spouse. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, we had just had her first son. And so she was able to talk about her experience with, being a mother who was at home with a son, a new mother at home with a son, trying to figure out how to be a mother, and also figure out how to be a military spouse to a deployed soldier who, you're not going to be able to just pick up the phone and talk to all the time, because that just doesn't work out that way, when you're deployed. So that's what we talked about in that episode. And then I just started getting more and more people who were reaching out to me, and I reached out to them, and we started spreading the word that way.
Well, I'm excited to do an interview with you on your show. But Right now, are you ready to take on the Tango Alpha Lima format?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, wow. All right, here we go. Topic 1. Space Force versus Space Force. The Hollywood Reporter reports that Netflix unfurled its star-studded comedy May 29th and is currently outmaneuvering the U.S. government to secure trademark rights globally to the armed services name. Now, the military.com article, it also tells us that the government has been involved in trademark infringement warnings and lawsuits in the past. A notable one is in 2017, they had suit against the Golden Knights, the National Hockey League team, because that's their parachute unit's name, and eventually they came to a trademark coexistence agreement. Now, I know you're into benefits and things like that, but what is your take on the government and copyrights with entertainment?
I'm not entirely sure what the issue is here. It seems like, in a way, it almost seems like clickbaity kind of title of the article, because it seems like someone might be making a big deal over nothing. I mean, there's been plenty of other TV shows that have used military names in the past. There's JAG, NCIS, MASH, things like that. They're not necessarily named after the after the Air Force or the Marine Corps or anything like that, but they're still using military related names in the past. And as far as trademarks go, it's not really like the registration of the trademark, but the actual use of the trademark that creates the rights and the priority over others. So, who's been using it first, I'm not sure. And that rule goes over the ownership in terms of like the first to use, not necessarily the first to file. So it's not like a race to the office with your paperwork and stuff, to file that stuff,
There has to be harm in a lawsuit, and there's
exactly.
no harm until it's used. But my thing, because I'm not a lawyer and we don't have the beard CV here to guide us, and because he is a lawyer, my thing is this: why would Space Force care at all? Because Space Force, the military Space Force,
right,
care about entertainment Space Force, because I believe the entertainment Space Force is amazing PR for them, and probably is encouraging some people to look into the military Space Force and to have some interest in it. And in fact, we always like to bring up the fact that somebody photoshopped Steve Carell on the official Space Force thing, and replaced their commander with his face, which maybe that's what ticked them off. I don't know.
I mean, it might be, but if you're worried about other people using it, and maybe private citizens or private companies and things like that using it, as opposed to the military using it. I mean, President Trump on his campaign website sells shirts and bumper stickers and hats that all say Space Force on them. So if it's that big of a deal for some other entity to be using it, then perhaps maybe the president shouldn't be using it on his campaign side either.
Well, I would guess the Netflix lawyers would bring that up if it came to get to court.
Yeah, I would think that they would at that point, but I'm not a lawyer either, so we'll see.
And I don't think the American Legion is going to draft a resolution on either side of this one.
No.
So we are going to continue to be fans of both the TV show and the newest branch of the military, though I am waiting to meet my first Legionnaire from space. That's going to be like one of the happiest moments in my life, I'm telling you. All right, are we ready? Or do you have any final thoughts on this, or are we good?
Well, I think that first Legionnaire from space, how usually there's challenge coins and things like that. Is it going to be like a moon rock as a challenge coin? Like what is that going to be? I'd be curious to see how that looks.
Now, see, we have to have you back because you're thinking like I think. This is amazing right now. All right, but right now we're going to go on. We're going to go to topic 2. Our protests changing the military. So we're still going to be dealing with the military and society and how they interact with each other. We have 2 stories. I'm not even going to read from the stories because their titles kind of say the story. One, the Army is considering changing the names of some bases named after Confederate leaders. And the second is that the Marine Corps has banned all Confederate flag display on bases and Marine Corps property, including bumper stickers, and anything on a Marine Corps base. Now, is this the United States military reacting to a social kind of upheaval right now, or what do we make of this?
In my opinion, I'm not generally one to encourage emotional responses to things. I'd rather have some facts laid out and figure out things, based on more concrete data as opposed to emotions. And this sort of feels like it's an emotional response to what's going on in the world. Not to make light of anything that's going on in the world, because it's very serious issues. But just a few months ago, at the end of February of this year, Task and Purpose, the publication, reported that an Army spokesperson told them that we have no plans to rename any street or installation, including those named for Confederate generals. And now, just a little over 3 months later, they're looking to rename those bases. So it seems to me like it's an emotional, kind of a knee-jerk response to what's going on in the world right now.
So you're telling me 3 months is not like enough time to have an evolution of thought and a complete turn of course?
In 2020 terms, yes, it probably is. But in normal society or normal thinking, I think it's probably more of a response to what's going on in the world, and it's not so much based on any I don't know. It just seems like it's emotional. I mean, when they originally named those bases on the streets or whatever it was done in the spirit of reconciliation. A lot of these were named shortly after the U.S. entered World War I, which was not too long after the Civil War. It was only about 50 years or so after the Civil War. And the naming wasn't seen back then as supporting a particular cause or issue or ideology or anything like that. It was done to unify the country and try to bring the South and the North back together. And by having a federal military installation named after a Confederate general, that was just one way of doing that, to kind of unify the country back together.
And it's interesting that you talk about reconciliation, because I do remember in my history books that the Confederate soldiers were eventually considered to be American veterans.
That's correct.
which is a unique thing in the world, because I think if you go to other wars, let's say if the American Revolution had been lost by the colonies, I do not believe in any fiber of my being that George Washington would have a statue anywhere in London.
No,
Or
I don't
that
either.
I think he
As a
would
matter of fact,
be,
I still don't
he
think he has a statue in London.
right, probably not. But nothing in this world would be named after him. He would be considered a traitorous loser had he lost. So I think it's a very unique situation, and the reconciliation is the reason for why it existed. I think the conversation that we're not going to have here, because it would be a long, very drawn out conversation, is whether that reconciliation effect has expired, and that new things have bubbled up and maybe causing division again. So those are like competing. There's like competing theories on both sides, and it's going to be an interesting discussion. And I'm sure we're all going to be paying attention. I know that I will.
Yeah, and that's not to say that there aren't, more recent heroes that are deserving of having their name on any of these military installations. But at the price of erasing the history almost. I don't know if that's really even the right way to put it, but is that the right thing to do, or are there other, maybe a new Navy ship that can carry some of these people's names, or other new installations that might pop up over time? Maybe that's the right way to go about doing it. But I only have so many answers. I'm a grunt. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So.
I hear that every day from my co-hosts about being a Marine, and they're both Army, by the way, so they're cheering for you right now. Okay, so I don't know if you know what's coming up next, but it's super exciting.
Okay,
it's something that
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, we go through topics like this. We'll probably spend a minute, 2 minutes max on them, and we appropriately call it rapid fire.
Let's do it.
All right, rapid fire number 1, the AAFES. And for those of you who don't know what that means, that's the exchange on base. Shoppers have generated $217 million for military communities in 2019 alone. Now, just to put this into context, in the last 10 years, the exchange has contributed $2.2 billion to morale, welfare, and recreation programs integral to Army and Air Force recruiting, readiness, and resiliency. Now, real quick, I shop the exchange. It's amazing to me because they have very competitive prices to start with. Plus, you don't pay tax. Plus, it's free shipping. Plus, I get the Military Star promotional thing. Plus, apparently, they're giving billions of dollars to the family that we're all a part of. What are your thoughts?
I don't see this as a bad thing at all. I mean, like, how could it be, right? It's supporting the military community. The shoppers are getting great benefits, tax-free, great prices and things like that. And especially, you said you shop online, so you're shopping the exchange online. This day and age when people are anxious about going out to the store and that type of thing, shop online and get that shipped to you for free. Amazon does it for free, but Amazon's not donating $2 billion to military communities, in the same way. So, I personally haven't shopped at the exchange since getting out. I know. After hearing about this, I feel like I'm doing the entire military community a disservice. So I should be getting back on that. I didn't realize that they did that,
Well, you're doing yourself a disservice, sir. And I hope that you get there. And you do a show about benefits. I think this is an unknown benefit that actually, on the online version, all U.S. vets under honorable scenarios are eligible to shop here. Now, in person, in the last year, they've added anybody with a VA rating to the original list of like Purple Heart, retired, Medal of Honor. So the exchange is opening up a lot more, but I think that the online exchange is a great benefit that all veterans should know about.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to go to rapid fire number 2. Legion holding online workshops for job seekers. Now, just so you know, the American Legion's Veterans Education and Employment Division is sponsoring 2 upcoming online workshops. The first one's going to be on June 16th, depending on when you watch this. That may have been in the past, but it's going to be at 11 a.m. And there's also on the 30th, there's going to be a workshop on using LinkedIn for network and jobs seeking. That's going to be on June 30th, like I said, at 12:30. And there will be a link in the show notes. But just before we talk about it, just so people know, if you go to legion.org/careers, you can get all sorts of career information just like this, maybe, and some resources for job hunting and things of that nature. But back to the online system. I'm going to tell you, when I joined the American Legion, I thought of it as this kind of old, behind the times kind of thing that, do I really want to spend my time there? But I'm telling you, we are coming up. We're having online training workshops now. I never would have imagined that. I thought they would be the last organization on earth to do that.
Right.
So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. And again, going back to the situation that we're in now these days, you're not going to have these workshops with 50, 60, 75 people or whatever in a hotel conference room or something like that, or even at a Legion post or something where people are going to come in and have these types of workshops in person. It's just not happening these days, the way it might have a year ago. And so having an online workshop, not only does it help you reach a bigger number of people because it's online, it's not location specific. Like you have to, get in the car and drive to this place or get on a plane and fly to this place. You can do it from anywhere. You can even do it in a bunker if you want. I think it's just another great benefit that the Legion offers, and maybe a lot of people are just unaware of this type of thing. So having this type of thing online, make it accessible to as many people as you can. I think that's great.
Well, let's hope that they decide that we can do these things moving forward. I mean, I really love it, and before I have to put pants on to get a job, why should I have to wear them to find a job?
I know, you don't even need pants these days. I mean, I saw a report of people, the sales report on some of the clothing stores, and it's like shirts are flying off the shelves, but pants are like lagging behind because people are just doing like Zoom or whatever chats for work. Like, what do you need pants for? Like, no one needs pants.
I know if producer Holly wasn't on the line, I would show you. I would stand up, but I don't want to get in trouble. All right, are we ready?
I think so. Let's do it.
Whoa. Oh, we have rapid fire number 3. Amid tensions with the U.S., Iran builds fake aircraft carrier to attack. Okay, so now Iran has built a fake carrier that is floating off one of their coasts outside of a parking lot where they, it's pretty impressive. It has 16 mock-ups of fighter jets on the deck, and it appears to be about 200 meters long, 50 meters wide. Unfortunately, a real Nemitz is over 300 meters long and 75 meters wide. So even with this test, they may be biting off more than they can chew.
Budget cuts.
Budget cuts. Do you think the American military needs to be concerned about this?
Not at all. Here's why. So they did something like this about 5 years ago. And people who are listening to this probably are familiar with the crawl, walk, run phase of training, right? It seems like they're still in that crawl phase. They're still training against an unarmed floating boat. Essentially, it's not going to shoot back at them the way our military ships are going to shoot back at them. So they're going to go and they're going to train, and of course they're going to shoot it and they're going to sink it, and it's going to be this big spectacular event. But they're not getting shot back at, so it's not really that impressive to me. I think it's really really all just for show. Honestly, I don't see it as being this big spectacular thing that they're making it out to be.
I mean, I hope that they know better, and I would give them a little bit of advice right now. I would say, if you want to take on the United States Navy, you don't build a fake ship. You have the technology and the funds to build a real one. Otherwise,
Right.
you are going to lose
Yeah.
every freaking time.
They have no chance if that's what there is in their inventory and that's what they're using. I don't think they have a chance. They're going to be wiped off the face of the planet if that's what they decide to do. Attacking our navy.
Yeah, I don't think that they're crazy enough to do that, because, like you said, it will be the end, just like we are coming up to the end of this
Nice
podcast.
transition there.
Now, people don't know, because time is a fluid thing. But when we finish this, I'm going right into interviewing with you on your show. Is there anything that we should tell our listeners to look forward to, so that they follow along and go over to Drive On and listen to us chat
we're gonna
there?
we're gonna be talking about you. You're gonna be the star of the show. We're gonna be talking about you, your background, what you did, how you got into involved with the American Legion and things that you've done along the way. And so you're going to be the star of the show. So
My mother will definitely be tuning in then. So
I will have 2 listeners on this one then. That will be amazing.
all right. I want to thank everybody out there for tuning into this extra special edition of the Tango Alpha Lima podcast. It was a great time with Scott here. And please, please, please tune in to his podcast, Drive On Podcast. And the website is driveonpodcast.com. Am I right?
It is, yeah.
Yep. So get yourselves over to driveonpodcastnow.com. And right after you subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to that podcast. This is Jeff Daly, and in absentia for Ashley Gorbuja Maldonado and Mark CV, this has been the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.